Welcome back to the Cannabis Podcast, and today we are going to take a look at news out of Lebanon, where they have legalized cannabis and now expect a $1 billion annual boost to their state treasury. Lebanon is betting huge on cannabis to save their broken economy. Now, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. Like, share, and subscribe, and let's get into the article. Lebanese authorities have announced the legalization of cannabis for medical and pharmaceutical purposes as part of a plan to reduce the financial deficit and support the state budget. Per the government's decision, a special body has been established to oversee domestic and international sales, ensuring market regulation and maximizing economic benefits of the move. The decision comes after years of security crackdowns on cannabis farmers who have cultivated it in secret. Cannabis farmers in this region continue cultivating the plant, saying it's less costly to grow than apples. That's fascinating. I want to repeat that. It is less costly to grow cannabis than it is to grow apples. That's a no-brainer right there. Although cannabis cultivation has declined in recent years due to security campaigns and drug factory raids, about 450 hectares in the foothills of Ermel in western Lebanon remain covered with cannabis. Now, let's see how large is a hectare. A hectare is 10,000 square meters, in case you didn't know or were interested. The government provides no alternative crops and has failed to implement any development plans in the area, leaving cannabis cultivation and its sale to drug dealers as the only means of feeding their families. These concerns are expected to ease after the Cannabis Cultivation Management Committee began its work under a law passed by Parliament legalizing the crop for medical purposes. They reassured farmers touring their areas and told them that the body would ensure mechanisms for selling their harvest to pharmaceutical manufacturers domestically and abroad at global market prices instead of relying on drug traffickers. The international consulting firm McKinsey said this cultivation is expected to generate a $1 billion annual for the state treasury. I wonder how much it's going to generate for them on their balance sheet. It's also said the revenue would help revive development efforts that have been stalled for many years. Now we're going to take a look at another article, but before we do, let's take a look at this consulting firm called McKinsey, or McKinsey & Company. Most notably, the company has been criticized for its role promoting OxyContin during the opioid crisis in North America. So what they're doing is they're just taking drug dealers, illegal drug dealers, they're taking the plant out of their hands and putting it in legal drug dealers' hands. But I didn't say that. Let's take a look at another article explaining more about how Lebanon is going through one of the worst economic crises in its modern history. Since 2019, the financial collapse has wiped out the savings of millions, shattering public confidence in institutions. The Lebanese pound has lost more than 98% of its value against the dollar, while inflation topped 200% at various points in 2024. According to the World Bank, on top of this, Israeli attacks this year and last year destroyed key infrastructure and displaced thousands of families. Today, more than 80% of the population lives below the poverty line. That's crazy. And I don't even remember, a few years ago, there was a massive explosion in Beirut, Lebanon. It was all over the news. It just looked so devastating. As in many parts of the world, Lebanon has long had a thriving underground cannabis and hashish industry, especially in regions like the Bekaa Valley, I think that's how you say it, where it's been seen for years as an alternative source of income. In April 2020, the Lebanese parliament passed a law legalizing the cultivation of cannabis for medical and industrial purposes. However, its implementation stalled amid political disagreements and the absence of a regulatory body, basically a government. Now, the government's decided to tackle its issues, the economic crisis and illicit cultivation, by turning them into a single potential solution: the legalization and regulation of cannabis. The goal is to move beyond decades of persecution and transform an informal activity into a legitimate economic driver that creates jobs and fuels local development. And just in the United States, in 24 to 2025, the cannabis industry created 450,000 jobs. That's a lot, especially in an economy where we are losing jobs. So keep that in mind. The state's plan of Lebanon includes overseeing the entire production cycle, so completely vertically integrated, soil and water analysis, manufacturing and packaging, farmer licensing, and inter-ministerial coordination among the health, industry, economic, and agriculture ministries. If the plan unfolds as projected, regulated production and exports could generate around $1 billion a year. In Lebanon's rural areas, growing cannabis is nothing new. For decades, farmers in the valley and the Ermel region have depended on this crop to survive. With its fertile soil, dry climate, and low production costs, Lebanon offers ideal natural conditions for growing cannabis. Many farmers turned to cannabis when traditional crops like apples or vegetables stopped being profitable. Let me repeat that. Many farmers turned to cannabis when traditional crops like apples or vegetables stopped being profitable. With no government support or development programs, cannabis became the only stable source of income for many communities. It's no longer about fruits and vegetables. We're getting ready to regulate cannabis as a legal agricultural product formally. Through legalization, the state hopes to legitimize a practice that has survived underground for years and establish a regulatory authority responsible for granting licenses, overseeing crop quality, monitoring sales to national and international pharmaceutical companies, and coordinating exports. The government plans to appoint this body before the year end. Now, it's interesting, they say monitoring sales to national and international pharmaceutical companies, but they don't say anything about retail sales, dispensaries, or the normal common person walking into a store and buying just a little bit to recreationally enjoy. So this is more focusing on the medicinal industrial purposes of pharmaceuticals. No surprises that legalization reduces drug trafficking. The Interior Minister stated that the country has taken a major step in the fight against drug trafficking and manufacturing. He said the government's working closely with Saudi Arabia to intercept cocaine and Captagon shipments headed for the Gulf. This approach is part of a broader strategy. Regulate what can be regulated and combat what remains illegal. Sounds like an adoption method they're going to take probably around the world. The government argues that formalizing the medical cannabis industry will help reduce illicit networks, allowing security forces to focus on smuggling and synthetic drugs. International evidence supports this logic. Wherever cannabis becomes legal, please start calling it cannabis, not weed. I love it. This is a great article, but you switch back and forth between weed and cannabis. Just call it cannabis. Appreciate it on behalf of everyone. Wherever cannabis becomes legal, illegal markets tend to shrink. Prices stabilize, and the state regains fiscal and health oversight. In Lebanon's case, regulation aims to channel the energy of an underground economy into a formal, traceable, and supervised system that delivers real benefits for local development. Still, beyond the initial optimism, the government faces major challenges in implementing the new legal framework. It must bring all farmers into the system through licensing, provide state support to production regions through investment in technology, educate the public on the importance of medical cannabis, and promote a steady transition from the informal to the regulated market. International experience shows that it can be done. Countries like Canada, Germany, and Uruguay have already proven that smart cannabis regulation can create jobs, tax revenue, and regional development, all while reducing drug trafficking and strengthening health oversight. Lebanon starts from a much more fragile position, but it has something others don't, and that's tradition, agricultural know-how, and a sense of urgency that could speed up change. All very great points near the end of this article. In a country that is struggling with economic turmoil, lack of leadership, lack of jobs, industry, and really nothing promising on the horizon. Cannabis is hope. Mentally, physically, and economically, it will provide all of that, as the data shows. And a lot of people, it's very interesting that the pharmaceutical industry is going to be taking over these sales when they are the ones fighting the legalization all around the world. Are they fighting it, or are they just wanting to make sure they control it when it does become legal? That would make sense if they are going to reschedule it to Schedule 3 to make it more of a, quote, medicinal drug as opposed to being completely recreationally legal. They still have some oversight onto it. They're not going to, they're going to benefit off it as much as they can and not allow you to. That's just the way the government works. It's not my opinion, unfortunately. But this is great for any country such as Lebanon that needs an economic boost, which seems to be a lot of countries around the world. Now, if a lot of countries have a lot of farmers and a lot of these trade wars are happening, then maybe cannabis is the next frontier, or hemp is the next frontier. But great article by Camilla of High Times as well. I don't want to butcher your last name, but thank you for writing this article. Please check out all the news on Lebanon. And if you don't know much about it, which I didn't either, but it's a very fascinating and rich historical region to look up. And hopefully once this becomes a booming market, we can go visit. So that's a great update out of Lebanon. If you have any opinion, let us know. If you're located in Lebanon, let us know in the comments. Hopefully there are some out there listening that are. But please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you have found value in this news update. Keep an eye on the economy, because it seems like a lot of these countries are implementing the plans that we are in the United States about to do. So what are they doing? They're legalizing medical cannabis for large industrial export and imports. That sounds about right, but it doesn't mention home grow. It doesn't mention personal, how much you're allowed to have on you. Now, maybe that's already been explained, but if you know, leave it in the comments. But great information out of Lebanon. Congratulations. Stay blessed. And until next time, don't forget to tip your bud tenders.